it's been a minute since I've uploaded, so I figured I would go ahead and upload for a short while today. The video's not going to be too long, I hope. So, yeah. Might as well just get into it. So the Uchiha was attacked, Minato questioned, as he sat at his desk, fingers entangled in front of his mouth, and she was interrogated for information. Yes, Hokage-sama, Kakashi replied. What information was the attacker looking for? Unknown. Saya refuses to tell me what was given, but I know it doesn't pertain to the safety of our village. Just her clan secrets, Minato sighed as he rubbed his temples in annoyance. Do we know who the attacker was? Also unknown. He was apparently cloaked, and neither Yui nor Saya could get a good look at his body. Minato was about to sigh in annoyance once again until Kakashi stopped him. But, I'm not sure how solid this information is, but Saya did say that the man had glowing purple eyes that looked like a demon's. A demon's? It sounds rather far-fetched. Was it possible she was hallucinating? It's certainly possible, but we can't know for sure until this man resurfaces again. Will he? Again, it's possible, but it would seem that he's got what he wanted. And you said that he was obtaining information on the Uchiha clan. Yes, sir. Why? Saya believes that he was working for someone, whether or not this was divulged by the attacker isn't clear. But it's all we have at the moment. Any idea who it could be? Yes, Saya believes it's Itachi Uchiha. The wind grew ice cold at the mention of that name. Itachi? Why would he hire someone to interrogate Saya for sensitive clan secrets? Wouldn't he just do it himself? That's what I thought at first as well, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. Explain. Itachi wouldn't risk his life re-entering the village just to obtain whatever little information that was. Just to obtain whatever little information that was learned from Saya. It's even possible that whatever information Saya spilled was already known by Itachi, and he's just trying to make completely sure that nothing was missed. But that doesn't mean he would trust someone other than himself with sensitive clan secrets, and that's what worries me. Kakashi truly looked concerned as he looked out the window overlooking the village. If there is someone within the village that is willing to work for an S-rank mission shinobi, missing shinobi, then we have an even bigger issue on our hands. That is worrisome, but without any information on what the person looks like, we can't go after him. The only thing we have on him is he's roughly the same age as my students, and he may have glowing purple eyes. That's it at the moment. I see. Well, for the time being, we will leave things as they are. Good night, Saya. Keep an eye on Saya. If she truly believes that this is to be touchy, the girl will do something she may regret. Okay. Scene change. Hello, Mr. Blue Eyes. I wasn't expecting you to come in today, Tintin said with a bright smile as I walked into the weapon shop. Last night I attacked Saya Uchiha and lied to the person that hired me to do it. That went against everything I was taught to do, but allowing Danzo to gain more power would only hamper my future plans. It was the following morning, and a heavy mist blanketed the early morning air. Not on mission or training. I questioned as the door closed behind me. Nope, we have a day off, the girl said as she leaned forward and encountered with a heavy sigh. It's some much-needed R&R. Congratulations. Anyway, what can I help you with? I'm actually looking for your father. Would he happen to be in at the moment? Tenten looked confused at my words. Aki, why would you need to talk to him? I ordered something and was wondering if he got it in. Oh, Aki is out at the moment, but he'll be in around noon, Tenten said as she tapped the side of her head. And thought, I could see if he left it here for you. What was it that What was it that you ordered? If he left it here, then it would be a scroll, I replied, making the girl look underneath the counter for anything that could have been left. Nothing's here. Let me check the back and see if it's in there. With that, 1010 disappeared into the back room in search of the desired item. After she was gone, the bell by the door rung, signaling that it had opened. Glancing over, I saw another man walk up next to me and turn towards the counter. The man standing next to me looked normal enough. Dark hair, plain clothes, and a gray hat that mostly covered his eyes. But I knew better. Just by looking at his eyes or the way he carried himself, I could see that he was just like me. Aki isn't here, I softly spoke. The man didn't even flinch when I spoke. He only nodded his head and continued to stare forwards. He wasn't surely but a normal man looking for money in a way, this made us similar, but because of this similarity, we both knew we could never become close. This isn't a topic that people should become friends over. I see. Do you know when he'll be back? The man responded in an equally dead tone. Lunch. Thank you. The man then walked out of the store without another word. Was that a customer? Tintin asked as she emerged from the back room. I shrugged my shoulders, making her puff her cheeks in annoyance. Are you ever going to be useful? Maybe one day, I responded as Tintin handed me the scroll with my name on it. I walked towards the door while placing the scroll in my pocket. When are you going to tell me your name? Maybe. Yeah, sure. I'll see you next time, Tintin replied as I fully exited the store. Chuckling at her expense, I continued my trek through the heart of the village towards one of my favorite morning spots. It took me about 20 minutes of walking, but I finally found it. Welcome to Ichiraku's. How may I help? Ayame went to say, but it saw it was me and smiled brightly. Well, if it isn't Naruto, how are you doing this morning? My hood was down and my scarf has been since placed into my pocket for safekeeping. Doing well. Thought I'd get some breakfast before starting my day, I replied, taking a seat at the counter. And what's today hold for my favorite customer? Just some studying is all. As the words left my mouth, I produced the scroll that was given to me by Tintin. Gotcha. Would you like the usual breakfast ramen? Ayame asked. Sounds good. The girl nodded and wrote something down before walking over to the pod. Where's Tucci this morning? He's out grabbing some supplies for a lunch rush. For the lunch rush, Ayame replied as she went to work on cooking my food. Yui seems happier lately. I frowned at Ayame's words as I opened the scroll. Did something happen at home? This was Yui's favorite place to eat as well, so it made sense that my twin would come to Ayame to talk about what was happening. Nothing really. My mind memorized the scroll as my eyes grazed over each and every word. There was a silence that fell over us again. I was cooking my food and me studying. After another few moments of silence, Ayame decided to talk again. She told me what happened, the fight you two got into. I remained silent as she continued. I thought that since she was... Oh, sorry about that. Heard a noise and I got a little startled. I frowned. No, there we go. I thought that since she was happier than normal that you two finally talked it out. I haven't talked to her, probably happy about something else. I replied in a very emotionless tone, my eyes never leaving the scroll in front of me without noticing Ayame was staring at me with concern in her eyes. She noticed the change in my personality, I'm sure of it. If there was anyone that could see my gradual change, it would be Yui and Ayame. Maybe, but she's always cared for you, more than you know, Ayame said as she slid the bowl of ramen in front of me while I rolled up my now memorized scroll. I stared down at my food in quiet contemplation before cracking my chopsticks apart. Thank you for the food, I said quietly. I ate my food in silence once another customer entered the store and pulled Ayame's attention away from me. Standing up, I waved at Ayame as I left the shop. Come again soon, Ayame said, and walked down the street towards the western part of the village where my mark resided. It wasn't an easy job, but I needed to be professional about it. The easiest jobs could very easily become the hardest ones. 40 minutes later, I found myself standing in front of a 6-story apartment building in one of the darker parts of town. The mist still hung low as I placed my hood over my head and scarf around my face. As I entered the building, I noticed that the building was old, but not as disgusting as some of the buildings in the red light district. Fourth floor, I told myself as I began my march up the steps until finding that floor that coincided with the scroll. It was quiet, as I'm sure most of the people are at work at this time of day. 428. I stepped silently. Oh. Hey there. Anyhow, sorry about that. 428. My steps silently echoed off the walls with each passing step. Now in front of the door, I activated my dark vision and peered into the room. An old man sat in his chair watching TV with a cigarette resting in an ashtray. 3 other people hid in the closets or adjacent rooms, but based on what they wore, I could tell they weren't shinobi. Opening the door, a small amount of lingering smoke flowed out the room and into the hallway. I walked into the room and closed the door behind me. The Phantom of the Leaf, here in the flesh, the man said once I sat down onto the couch. Nearby, he was old, maybe in his late 80s or 90s, if I had to guess. You're much younger than I thought you'd be, and you're much older than I thought you'd be. The old man laughed as he took another drag of the cigarette. Misinformation can be very useful when placed in the right places. The man put the cigarette back into the ashtray, but continued staring at the TV. I thought you'd poison me or cut my throat in my sleep. You could have, but not you. You're someone who should be treated with respect, I commented. Respect? Sorry, but you don't deserve any respect. People like me, like you, we knew exactly what we were signing up for, and we both knew how we are going to end. At this moment, 3 men emerged from their hiding places, all hold knives. Yeah, I guess we do, I replied, still sitting on the couch as they moved closer. Just as they were about to attack, a slight wind picked up in the room, and within the blink of an eye, the walls were covered in crimson blood. The older man seemed unfazed by this and continued staring at the TV while smoking a cigarette. Did anyone ever tell you how I became so powerful? How I ruled the underworld of Konoha for such a long time? I can take a guess, then tell me, young one. What did it take for me to gain so much power? Sacrifice. The old man laughed, and then began coughing roughly at my words. Danzo has wanted you dead for a long time, but you've managed to hide from him. I shook my head. And here I am killing you after accepting an odd job. Danzo could have killed me several times, but he knew that I lost everything I had gained when that damned 4th Hokage took office. The elder looked sad as he remembered when Minato took office. He probably kept me alive despite me. So the only money you had left was spent on these 3 men. A shame, but we all have to fall from grace someday. From one generation falls into the history books, a new one fills the void. I'm lucky I lasted as long as I have. I suppose you're right. I looked over at the man who knew what was coming next. Any last words? Tell my son that I love him. Tell him that I've always loved him and my granddaughter, and it was then that I noticed tears flowing from his cheeks. I'm sorry for his wife. I'm so sorry. Standing from the couch, I raised my hand with the wind building behind it. Have a nice rest. With a swift downwards motion, it was over. The room was quiet. As I silently left the apartment, that old man wasn't one of the tumors. No, he was just a shell of who he once was. Now standing outside of the apartment complex, I turned and looked up at the window that once housed one of the most powerful men in the village. Is that how I'll end up if I ever grow old? Alone with only myself to keep me company. I didn't want to think about it. If this was how I would end up, then so be it. Scene change. I can't believe we finally convinced Dad to give us a C-rank mission, Yui exclaimed with excitement. It's about time. The blonde girl was currently walking down the street towards her home, where she was instructed to pack whatever she deemed important for an extended trip such as this. Thinking over everything, she would need a patch of golden yellow swan past her Thinking over everything she would need. A patch of a golden yellow swan swam past her peripheral vision. Nearly skipping a heartbeat, Yui shot around to see her brother walking down the road wearing a black jacket with its hood down. But then something caught in her throat. Why am I hesitating? Yui thought as Naruto continued on this way without ever facing her. Yui thought as Naruto continued on his way without ever seeing her. He's my twin brother, yet. That angry face flashed before her again. Growing at her weakness, she ran after Naruto. Naruto! The boy in question stopped and looked over his shoulder. Yui froze as she looked into his eyes. Looked into the eyes of someone she couldn't recognize. It was Naruto standing before her, but those eyes, they held nothing. He stared down as people walked past them on the very busy street. I just wanted to say that I'm going to leave the village for a while on a mission. Yui had to look away from the bone-chilling stare that her brother was giving her. Have fun. Even his words held no emotion. I'm not sure how long I'll be away. She glanced up to see the same face as before. That's all I wanted to say. See you when I get back. Yui turned and began walking away, but stopped when something came to her ears. Stay safe, Yui. The girl turned to see that Naruto had already disappeared into the crowd. Yui smiled brightly when she heard those words. Scene change. A familiar bell rang as I entered the weapons shop that served as my bounty board. Aki was seen answering some questions for a customer while Tenten was nowhere to be seen. After looking over at me, he dismissed the puzzled Chunin and turned his attention to me. I nodded my head, making Aki saddened somewhat. Follow me, please, Aki said as I followed her into the back, leaving a confused Chunin in our wake. The weaponsmith closed the door and sat at the table, motioning me to follow suit. After sitting down, I placed the scroll onto the table and hardened my gaze, said Aki. Is it done? Yes. As soon as I spoke, Aki took a deep, trembled breath. I'm sorry I had to ask you to do this. I knew that he was trying to say he wanted the rumored phantom of the leaf to kill the old man. And I knew why. He wanted me to tell you something. Aki didn't look up, just kept his face buried in his hands. He said that he's always loved you and your daughter. His body began to tremble somewhat as I spoke, and he was sorry for what happened with your wife. Tears began falling from beneath his hands as I watched the normally distant man break down. I sat there for a while in silence as I watched Aki grieve and simply take in what he's just done. What transpired between the two leading up to this point remained unknown to me, but it must have been bad if it came to this. Thank you for bringing me his last words, Aki finally said after another moment of silence. I didn't respond as I watched him grab the scroll and throw it in the trash. His eyes lingered on the metal trash bin for a while before he finally stood up and moved towards the stairs leading up to the second floor. With that, I was left alone to my own thoughts. After a few seconds of silence, I exited the back room and into the store, and I see it was dormant of life. And to see that it was dormant of life, seizing the opportunity, I locked the front door and flipped the sign to the closed position. It was the least I could do. Well, if it isn't Naruto. I knew the voice before I even turned around. Danzo, I questioned as the elderly man walked towards me. How have you been? I haven't seen you since the incident with the CCC, Danzo asked as we both played our roles in case someone may have been following the powerful shinobi. Trying to get a head start on my high school studies, I replied as we began walking down the busy road. It took a lot to keep a happy persona up, but I knew that any number of people could be following this man around, risking who I really was, just because I didn't feel like acting was very unprofessional. Would you like to chat over some tea? I've been in meetings all morning and need some time to unwind. Tea doesn't sound bad at all. Did you have a place in mind? There's this really nice tea shop near here that has a nice view of the Hokage Plaza. Would that suffice? Of course. Hopefully they have good food as well. You won't be disappointed. They actually have the best. Our conversation carried on as we continued down the street, all the while keeping on our pointless conversation so we may have bored any would-be listeners. Danzo and I were both people that hated this sort of thing, pointless conversations, that is, but knew the art of deception required one to be particularly good at misleading conversations. While his root agents could probably never complete this, Danzo made sure to drill this aspect of deception into my head until it became almost instinct when the time called for it. I didn't realize your favorite restaurant was so close to my home, I stated as we entered the master plaza at the very center of the building. The plaza was surrounded by 3-story buildings in a circular fashion with a fountain that rifled their size, 4 roads, and one leading south towards the main gate, another leading north towards the Hokage Tower, a third pushing west towards the industrial and red light districts, and a final road that would lead one into the clan district. It was in the east, surrounded the place. This was one of the busiest places in the village, for some reason, and 2 blocks north was called, and 2 blocks north was the place I called home. This place was. Only the best businesses can afford to rent this place. Can afford to rent a place here on the Great Hokage's Plaza. Danzo coined as we walked past crowds of people that seemed to be basking in the beauty of the plaza. This was the place that one could see both the Hokage Tower. Hold on. Anyhow. This was the place that one could see both the Hokage Tower and the front gate at the same time without hopping atop buildings. I followed Danzo into one of the buildings and up a series of stairs until finally we came to a glass door. Inside the building was decorated in a golden hue with dark greens scattered about the stairwell. Sorry if there's any noise of me moving. A servant opened the door with a deep bow, allowing us access to a rather exclusive restaurant, if I had to guess. A woman wearing a hostess uniform stood behind the desk with a bright smile adorning her face. "Hello, Danzo-sama. A table for 2? The woman asked. "In the usual spot, if you'd please," Danzo replied politely. The woman bowed, and we followed her to a booth next to a window that overlooked the plaza. The room was large and had plenty of booths. The tables around the room, but to my surprise, it was sparsely populated. In fact, the booth we were sitting at had nobody within earshot. Was it because of how outrageously expensive this place was? A waiter soon came by with a teapot and 2 cups. "Could you please bring us some samples, please? My friend here is very hungry." The waiter bowed obediently and left without a word. "So what do I owe the pleasure?" I asked as Danzo poured us our tea. "You have another mission," the elder said. Getting straight to the point, he handed me a cup of tea, and I took a delicate sip of the hot liquid. "This time, it will take you out of the land of fire." "Oh, I've never left the village before. Are you sure I'm up to it?" Danzo chuckled at my apprehensiveness. "You'll do just fine, but I must say that this mission is rather complex. The waiter returned and placed several food items in front of us before leaving once again. It regards who you'll be traveling with and who your target is. Who's your target? Who's the target? Sotsutsu Kazuhana, daimyo of the land of snow. A daimyo? Danzo nodded, making me sigh heavily. Interesting. You'll be traveling with a group of diplomats from Konoha heading on a routine political mission to improve relations between our two nations. Ooh, that was kind of a bar. Anyhow, they'll depart within the next 24 hours if my sources are correct, and I'm assuming you've already made arrangements. No, I haven't. You're on your own and getting access to the diplomatic team. The only person that can give you permission to accompany them would be the fourth Hokage, meaning it would have looked out of character for you to ask on my behalf. I understand. Danzo nodded his head, relieved that he didn't have to explain this aspect of the missions. Once there, you are to kill the man however you see fit, but you cannot reveal yourself as my assassin. Do you understand? Understood. Good. Now, here is the scroll containing your mission parameters. You have until the end of the trip to complete the mission, Danzo said as he took one last sip of his tea before standing. I expect to hear your success when you return. I expect to hear of your success when you return, because you know what failure means. I nodded my head, and with that the men left the restaurant to the other important tasks. Sighing, I looked out the window with a blank stare, killing a daimyo. Who would have thought it had come to this? No, this is where I'll be ending part 4. It's not the end of chapter 4, just part 4. Or not, no, part 5, sorry. And it's not the end of chapter 5. So, I'll see you all next time, and hope you enjoyed.